And now, from the Marquee Media Studio inside Mark Tank, it's the Mark Haney Show.
Yes, this is the Mark Haney Show, and we are on a mission to ignite the entrepreneurial revolution right here in the hometown we love. And today on the show, we have a superstar. We have Jim Corbett. He is the chairman of Bay Equity. He's going to share the story about his recent exit. He's had a handful of very significant exits in his life, where that's where we sell a company, in case you haven't heard that term. But you know what I'm trying to do here in the entrepreneurial community. And Jim founded something called the Sacramento Entrepreneurial Academy, Entrepreneurship Academy, that's done so many great things over the last, 10, 20 years in Sacramento. When he walked up into my office, he said, "Mark, I'm handing you over the torch. I'm passing the torch to you in leading the way for entrepreneurship." He's done so much. And today we get to share his story, but from a guy that's maybe 15 or 20 years older than me, to share some wisdom and to pass the torch. Quite an honor. Stick around. I think you're going to be very impressed with one of the heroes of the American economy. Stick around, my friends. You know, it is my pleasure to bring on Jim Corbett. He is a former chairman at Bay Equity, but he just paid me what I would consider like the biggest compliment. He said, It's probably time for me to begin to pass the torch over to you, Mark, as somebody that really loves entrepreneurship, believes in the power of an entrepreneur. So today, my friends, we're gonna hear some wisdom from a true hero, and a hero of the American economy. He's got a tremendous story of exiting companies, successful exits. So we'll hear a little bit about that, but we'll also hear a little bit about his view of entrepreneurship and why it's important. And then hopefully we just pick up some general wisdom. I want to get some wisdom for myself as I think about my next chapter of my life, or the existing chapter. Because Jim's a couple of years older than me, and so it's interesting to hear what somebody that I would aspire to be like is thinking, or what he thought when he was my age. So with that said, Jim, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Mark. It's an absolute pleasure and an honor to be here. I've observed you from somewhat of a distance over the last few years. I'm really proud of how you've taken the torch with passion to be a force for entrepreneurship in the Sacramento region. You know, Sacramento was and still is a government town, and people don't think of it as a hub of phenomenal business activity. And, you know, for years and years, they thought that Sacramento region would be Silicon Valley East. And it took a long time for a lot of that to mature, even though there were some big inroads here by Intel and Hewlett-Packard to set up branches here, monumental manufacturing facilities, and so on. But it never really galvanized in ground-level entrepreneurship. And, when we started the Entrepreneurship Academy in '86, the word entrepreneurship really was kind of a foreign word. But we blazed the trail, and, hindsight now, they call us the oldest entrepreneurship organization in the community. And when I heard that, it made me feel proud that we have survived that long and have created so many wonderful businesses and have met so many wonderful people over the years. I mean, you and I are different than other folks. And I don't mean that in any negative or derogatory way. We just look at things differently. And consequently, in many respects, we have no fear. We have the desire to figure something out. make a better mousetrap, so to speak. I'm using some old phrases here, but I think they're still apropos.
They are.
And in any event, it's I meant it from the bottom of my heart when I said that to you when I walked in, Mark. Every community, every situation of note needs someone to help lead the way. And maybe in a small way I did with the wonderful folks that helped me with the Academy. Maybe you're doing the same thing. Yeah. And it's a big deal. It's a really big deal. Leadership is in many cases undervalued. It's really hard to say that, but I think there's a lot of truth to that. There's so many wonderful people doing things in their community that in many cases are heralded, and but they're doing it because they know it's the right thing to do. So when I started the Academy, it was at the behest of a professor named William Haberly from Indiana University. And he arguably was the first professor of entrepreneurship in America.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I know there will be people that will debate that. I throw that out there to get reactions sometimes. But he was teaching classes in his basement on Monday evenings on capital raising and what have you, how to put a deal together in the 50s. And the rest of the week, he put deals together.
Wow.
He worked in and around Wall Street, did oil and gas deals, equipment deals. He was just that type of guy. So I worked for him at IU. I studied under him, and we kept in touch with one another after I left IU in the early 72. I left in summer of 72 after spending 2 phenomenal years in the Midwest. I'll tell you, phenomenal years. And we kept in touch with one another because he would come to the West Coast. And one day we were sitting in the conference room at Hambrick and Quist, which was one of the early venture firms in the San Francisco region, still in existence, I believe. Anyway, one of his proteges was the director of finance there. And he said, I had this idea, Jim, that entrepreneurs should replicate themselves. A simple but powerful statement. And he said, I think we should have academies throughout the country that are devoted to helping the entrepreneurs get on their way. He didn't give us much more than that, to be honest.
Got a concept.
But the concept was strong. And with the help of some of my business friends, advisors, we went about putting the Academy together.
And you've made such an impact. I mean, how many, do you know off the top of your head roughly how many?
We say about 900.
900 entrepreneurs go through this academy, and there's so many success stories, but I don't know if there's any stories that come to mind that our audience might recognize.
Well, there's a couple of familiar names in the community. These are young men who went through the academy in the 90s. One was who exited in 2017. His name's Buzz Stryker, and he's as charismatic as the name suggests. He put together a POS portal, which was a software platform for large and regional banks to manage their credit card customers, those vendors, those customers that use credit card to facilitate their transactions. So that was his first piece of that. He went on to sell it to, after 17 years and with significant dividends, to a small but close-knit investor base, raised $500,000, predominantly family and friends. And over the years, he distributed significant profits in the form of dividends and sold it for $145 million to a NASDAQ company out of North Carolina. Beautiful exit.
Well, maybe we can talk about, because some people don't understand, they don't think about entrepreneurship the way that we do, but maybe we can just share with our audience. When an entrepreneur succeeds, he has a $140 million exit. and along the way, the things that happen when he's building that company. Talk about that impact. You talked about duplicating that. What is this that we want to duplicate?
Well, I think it's the spirit. It's the drive. It's what would Buzz do. It's being part of something much bigger than yourself. For example, Buzz graduated from the academy, I'm going to say 91, 92. Over the initial years, he hired academy alums. One of them happened to be named Tron, who worked for him for 16 of those years, got some options. But Buzz said, whenever I have a problem, I give it to On. So On helped Buzz with all kinds of iterations. And now she's going on to start her own business called Notify.com. And that is another web-based company that helps apartment complexes and condominium associations manage the voluminous number of packages they get every day. So she put together an app for that. And now it's thriving even in the corporate milieu because a lot of people, given their neighborhoods having some theft off doorsteps or having their packages delivered at work. So On is right here in Roseville.
Wow.
She's she's probably 5'1", 95 pounds, but a dynamo.
Notify. I got to put that on my list, my attack list. You think about that. So success breeds success.
Yes.
Buzz has this success. People have success, and I think often that success it comes in the form of confidence because
Yes.
if Buzz can do it, maybe I can do it. And I think part of what happens when, I think that's why I started the show predominantly is if I could share the stories of what entrepreneurship really is, then it might get other people to say, if Jim can do it, well, maybe I can do it too, right? And so that's it in a nutshell. And why do you think that hasn't caught on in Sacramento, or do you think it's catching on?
I think it's catching on. I've been to various events. Christy Serrato has.
Pair anything.
She's one of the most influential people in the Entrepreneurship Academy history. I mean that. She got us in the 21st century. She dragged a lot of the board kicking and screaming to get into the 21st century. We are now a well-known entity in the region, and I think it had everything to do with Christy. I mean that most wholeheartedly. But she has dragged me to a number of different events. I've seen you at a couple of those, and we're part and parcel of the conversation. We do this 20-session program where the fellows are exposed to a lot of the region's entrepreneurs, a lot of the techniques to kind of evaluate your concept and idea and how to move it forward. And, when you're in that room with like-minded people, it's special. It is special. It raises your game. And I think that galvanization of people in the same place, wanting to do more, wanting to do more. I used to give this recruiting talk often in the early years of the academy, of course. And I said, there's people in your classes right now, on the left and on the right, that you will prefer not to be around anytime when you're outside of class. They're not your kind of people. We're all different. I'm not trying to be derogatory here. You want to be around people that are exciting, have energy, they're thinking outside the box so that you can raise your game too. And that's why I strongly urge you to give this academy a good look. You're going to be around unique and different people that have an energy that maybe you don't see every day. And it's the truth. When you're in the academy room, it's pretty damn cool, I'll tell you.
That's great. I've witnessed it myself as somebody who's come in and spoken.
Sure.
And just, it's impressive.
Yeah. So they're small. It's a small group. 15 to 20 is a good number for us. We respect it. It works for us. But there's something inside of the people that are involved directly and indirectly in the academy that they know in their heart this is a special situation.
Can we talk about exiting a company and having a successful exit?
Yeah.
You've had a few,
Yes.
and one's very recent, so
Yes.
I don't know what you can talk about, but maybe you can contrast some of that experience with one another?
You know, it's an interesting thing. We started a mortgage bank a little over 15 years ago. Family and friends money, about $2 million. And I was asked to participate because I felt the gentleman involved, he was another Academy alum named Brett McGovern from the Bay Area, went to UC Davis. He said the other day, he says, "Jim, I've known you 26 years. I said, "What?" In any event, we're friends. He was involved in the commercial real estate brokerage for a long while, so we had some real estate contact in that regard. Played a lot of golf, stayed in touch with one another. So when he came up with this idea in 2007, which was the dredges of the real estate industry, to start a mortgage bank, he asked me to come down. He asked my wife and I to come down for a barbecue. So we went down to Novato and had backyard session with him and his wife. And I said, "Brett, I like your story. I think there's something here. We should do something." So we jumped in with both feet, and it's a complex, difficult business, but we made it happen. Yeah. And when I say we, I'm really talking about Brett in particular, his brother who was president, and a cadre of people that through trial and error and making some mistakes, we brought along a management team that frankly is together for 10 years today. These are mortgage banking superstars. I told this to them at our last retreat before the Redfin transaction closed. I said, "You guys may not realize it, but you are the superstars of the mortgage banking industry. You took this company from this to this, and it's an extraordinary story." And all of them were staying on, and I'll get to the exit in a minute, Mark. But all of them were staying on. Redfin wanted us to come in and be their self-contained, under their umbrella mortgage bank. They let go a lot of people that were part and parcel of their mortgage bank. You know, the old classic make or buy. Mm-hmm. They tried to make. It didn't work. They bought. They brought us in. So our company is intact. We've been with Redfin 21 days today, and they're moving forward. I was the only one that had to submit his resignation. As a wholly owned subsidiary. They no longer needed a board of outsiders. It was usually they're made up of some insiders and so on. Anyway, I feel like I finally kind of put my hat on the nail and said I'm done. It's a good feeling though. All these people that helped us move forward, extraordinary people. So when I say we, I mean there's 1,400 people we had in our employ, and there were many of them are absolute superstars. So, when you stop and think of all the things that can go wrong these days with security of financial information, I mean, the regulatory world is unbelievable. And we played that game as well as you could. I actually one day heard a direct and specific compliment to our CEO from one of the key national regulators. Usually they just say satisfactory. They said outstanding.
Wow.
Big words, In any event, the Redfin deal was interesting. We both had the same attorney.
Well, okay, that's interesting. How often do you see that happen?
It happened, but our woman attorney, and she was also Redfin's attorney. She says, "I'll represent Redfin, but I have someone that I'll recommend to represent you." It turned out to be her former mentor.
Oh, interesting. Was it an unsolicited offer?
No, it was a cold call on behalf of a investment bank out of New York City, popular name. That the name escapes me now, but a significant company. I think O'Keefe is part of their words. You may have heard.
Yeah.
The long and short of it is, it came together in 90 days. We put this deal together.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Before? What about timing in terms of? I mean, it appears that it's probably really good timing.
Yes.
Based upon interest rates, hiking and so on.
Yeah.
But were you wanting to have? Was the timing right for you, or how did you decide?
I
on
can
the
tell
timing
you,
of doing something
we
like this?
started our CEO Brett McGovern really started the conversation at a board level in August of 20. We started having some conversations. We've had a couple really good years. The timing was right for an exit in the big picture. But the lower interest rates, we played that to a fairly well with the refi, although we like to think of ourselves as a purchase shop. Purchases are less sensitive to the interest rate increases. People are buying a house, they're subject to a contract, they want to get the loan, close the loan, close the house. Where in refinance, it's very rate sensitive. So we played that really well over our entire history. We called them certain definitive real estate refinance booms. So we started that conversation. We went out to a consultant who helped package us, threw the line in the water a little bit on a very anonymous basis. No real bites, nothing of any consequence. And we stopped soliciting the company to third parties. Then we got some calls from a private equity firm out of the blue. We got a call from a regional bank out of the blue. And at the same time, this other deal comes in unsolicited.
Oh, interesting.
So we had three options to stare at, digest, understand, ask questions about. And lo and behold, it really came down to the Redfin situation presented itself as the best for all parties. In particular, the wonderful employees that we leveraged to get to this position. Mm-hmm. And it's been well received by the employees, especially on the ops side. They are just excited about it because a lot of these folks, even at the top jobs, didn't have much other place to go. You know, you can grow so much. And we did all this organically. We grew this whole thing organically. We used the financing mechanism to raise some money on a debt basis, but that was still family and friends money too. So long and short of it is, it was a fascinating story. It came together. The timing was phenomenal, and we have high hopes for the new entity in terms of Redfin.
90 days, that does sound remarkably fast, especially for such a large company. You know, they've got, they're going to do a full process, due diligence and so
Absolutely.
on. So 90 days. Can you contrast that with what you think might be like standard, what you've seen in the past?
Well, I can just tell you, the 90-day piece really just dealt with the contractual situation and Redfin and our due diligence. Then there was another 90 days to go through the regulatory process.
You were already fairly well prepared because of the earlier conversations you had. So had you already put together like a deal room and things like that? Or
we put together some online situations with big file rooms.
Okay.
But the truth of the matter is, when you're dealing with a public company, the due diligence is deep and wide. And they had a cadre of people. Talk about people. They looked at us and said, how do you do all this with so few people?
So let's walk our audience through this, because this is somewhat, not only is this inspirational, I think, for a lot of people, but from an educational standpoint. So you're selling a company like yours with 1,400 employees, and they bring on this group of people. These are all suits that come in, and do they pull out, what are they doing? Looking through your file boxes and stuff?
Everything you can imagine. Every equipment lease, every real estate lease, you name it. Any contract we have.
And they show up at your office.
Yeah, they're ready to go.
It's not as much remote. And these are typically like Big Four type accounting people?
Well, they did use a lot of third parties too. Okay. Of course they did. But it was mostly the Redfin people and they had detailed checklists that went on for miles. And somehow or another, our COO, who was a superstar.
Yeah, you think about that. This is a little bit for our audience. When you get a due diligence checklist, it sounds like, okay, yeah, go down the checklist. But in a larger transaction like what you guys had, that's like multiple pages of pulling out every document. The amount of work that it takes for your team, your internal team, or maybe you have an external team that helps, but it's a lot of work.
It did.
It can almost, in many cases, it can derail the operations of a business.
That's and we were concerned about that on a board level. We were concerned about that it takes your focus off, what you do best every day. I'm happy to tell you, though, we performed better in the first quarter than everybody expected us to. So go figure.
There you go.
We have a great team of people. Great team.
It's interesting. So I've sold a few businesses, and you don't want your numbers dropping in the due diligence period. In that 90-day window, that's not a good time to have a bad month, right? Yeah. So you continue to progress in wealth even throughout the. Okay, because that's interesting.
So one thing, though, it's interesting about that. We saw the change in the market coming in November, December, and we've been through this before, in the ups and downs of the mortgage banking industry. We would have been laying some people off in November and December. But because of the transaction, we kept our team in place, and because we knew that we were doing about $9.5 billion of financing the last couple of years, purchase and refinance. Redfin built their company up to about $1 billion. Their mortgage piece up to about $1 billion. So we saw an opportunity for additional volume via the transaction and the ability to keep our people on rather than lay them off. I mean, layoffs are part of the industry. It's just a fact of life. When the volume stops, you don't need as many bodies. It's that simple. Even though we put our share of bots in the process. We've used offshoring in India. We've organically ratcheted up our IT piece to make it more and more efficient. I mean, we pushed all the right buttons when you look back on it. But nonetheless, we would have laid some folks off. That's just a fact of life. We were ready to do it. The transaction started going wobbly. It never went wobbly. They wanted us. They felt us. We were the right team to be part of their company.
So when the announcement was made to the employees, so there's that moment when it happens. The funds hit the bank accounts for the people that have a share, and then you've got to go make the announcement. Walk me through the emotion, if you don't mind, of the the management team, the people that got paydays and so on, and then how you explain what was happening to your team. So
rough and dirty, the announcement was January 11th that it went out to the public.
Okay,
and then the 90-day period, the regulatory period commenced. So people knew well in advance before the deal was officially blessed by the regulatory. And we're dealing with almost 50 states too. Not only the federal regulators, but also the states, which can be...
I heard they're tightening up on these bigger transactions like that too. Did you run into any struggle in terms of?
We did not.
Yeah. Okay.
I think in a big picture, $145 million is not that, or $140 million is not that big a deal. Yeah. I don't know. Everything looks like a big deal to me. I'm from a little town in Jersey, baby. But the long and short of it is, our CEO and president said after that announcement hit on January 11th, they never worked harder in their lives to talk to people and communicate with people at all levels of the company, to reassure them that nothing is going to change. And this is a classic phrase, as you know, Mark, but in our case, it's the truth. They wanted us lock, stock, and barrel under their umbrella, and hopefully it's going to be a great for everyone. Now, Redfin has the ability, because they're out there. Redfin's 17 years old, by the way.
Wow.
It shocked us, too.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I feel like I just heard of them 5 or 7 years ago.
Yeah. So anyway, they've been out there for 17 years. A lot of folks check their value of their homes all the time, are familiar. I don't think I've talked to one person that didn't know Redfin. I mean, they're out there.
Great brand.
So the bottom line is they generate a ton of leads. So our pitch to our loan officers was, we're going to generate leads for you like you've never seen before. Because generally, the loan officers, either through referral, but oftentimes they get their leads through real estate agents and brokers who are working with a client that have to qualify for a loan. And that's how the process starts. So they work hard at getting those leads. So if there's another source of leads for commissioned folks, they get it.
Well, and I think too, going into this environment, so I dabble a little bit in real estate.
Sure.
My daughter's a local realtor,
Uh-huh.
so I see that, and you can already hear at the water cooler that what is going to happen in real estate with interest rates going up. I mean, it's still a super tight market.
Yes.
But I would think that the lead gen capabilities of a Redfin, it gives a little more confidence to kind of ride it out.
Yeah. So we've had some defections. I mean, either some people are not familiar with the Redfin model in their geographic area and they didn't see the opportunities. But most of our loan officers, in excess of 85% of our loan officers are happy, they're excited, they're making contacts. They've done this complete orientation with Redfin people and Bay Equity people. So that's been in process the last 2 weeks. It's been exciting to observe, I'll tell you.
So the people that got the payday, right? So I think I wanted to talk generally speaking about like what happens in a transaction like that. Do you have multiple shareholders? And
we had 23 friends and family, and I literally mean friends and family. Varying sizes, of course.
Right. Was any of this life changing for people?
That's interesting. That phrase was used often, by the way, in the Buzz Stryker POS portal transaction because there were some life-changing circumstances for our investor base. Again, the friends and family, some of them were close friends of mine. Let's just say this: it took them to another level. It elevated their hopes and dreams.
Yeah,
and it's very exciting. The same thing can be said about Bay Equity. These are all qualified investors on the front door, but nonetheless, the opportunities for these sorts of paydays don't come along very often. So are they life-changing? People like I've had taken a lot of kidding in the last 3 or 4 weeks about, when's the yacht showing up or when's the plane showing up. And I just remind people, I said, I wasn't chopped liver before Bay Equity.
You've had a little bit of success prior. Well, okay, so let me put on my, so I'm 58. I'll be 59 here pretty soon. My dad died he got sick in his late 40s. So so when you were coming on the show today, you're a few years older than me. I think you might be a little younger than too young to be my dad, but still at least older brother. I wonder, so we have some of the same belief systems too, right? Around entrepreneurship.
Sure.
I didn't serve in the military, but you are a war hero. My son was in the military, so I have this very patriotic sort of mindset.
Sure.
And I'm still driven at 58, where I feel like a number of my friends who have had a little bit of success or maybe even very modest success, they really don't have the drive that I feel like I still have. So put yourself back to 58, I guess, if you will, and maybe kind of walk me through the drive or the change of your, personality, the change of your attitude toward winning as you aged over this last several years.
I think the most important piece of that has been my upbringing, my time in growing up, and how people extended their hand to me to help me along the way. And I feel that same desire to give back to younger people. And that makes me excited. I think for you, Mark, and you can respond any way you like, your best years, because of what you're doing here, are ahead of you. The excitement and love and passion you have for business and entrepreneurship will grow exponentially at this juncture in your life. You're in the early years of your academy versus mine. I just love the thrill of our Saturday sessions, being exposed to the different speakers that came in, but being around these young people that, bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and just ready to grasp knowledge and soak it up and be a sponge. I think you're in that same boat in your situation here in Rockland. it's exciting to help, to help bona fide young folks who want to succeed. And it's across all spectrums of society. I mean, the Academy's been as diverse can be since day one. We have people from poor backgrounds, lower middle class background, all kinds. And then we've had some kids that are from, very wealthy families, but still have that thirst and desire to do something on their own. And I find all that fascinating. And all this commentary, it's out there, this and that, and I try really hard to filter, not get it let in my filter. But the American dream is so alive and well. It's unbelievable when I think about it. I have a friend of mine. He was one of the inventors of Flight Car. Probably never heard of Flight. I haven't. Flight Car was a platform that allowed people that parked their cars at an airport to rent it out while they're away. And him and his partner were the youngest entrepreneurs to raise $20 million from private equity. They ended up selling it to Mercedes-Benz.
Oh, wow.
That's just one piece of this young guy, never went to college. Through a mutual friend, we just had 2 or 3, 4 conversations in the backyard. And he ends up meeting a real estate entrepreneur, and they master leased warehouses during the down period of warehouses about 4 or 5 years ago. And then they cut it up, and they have all kinds of small business people, probably mostly blue-collar guys that figured out there's a niche for them to self-actualize in their own way. And these warehouses, they have 23 warehouses across America now, and they're full of these types. Men, women, all shapes, sizes, nationalities, and they're thriving as either some little niche in American society. Mm-hmm. And I'm saying to myself, the American dream is on fire.
Do you think people, so you and we live in a world of entrepreneurship, and we're around these driven people, and it's obviously infectious, but yeah, you turn on the news, there's places where you hear this commentary that maybe is doesn't talk about winning in the same aspects that we do. Do you think we're more entrepreneurial as Americans today than we were, say, 20, 30 years ago? Do you think we're more driven? Do you think society is lazier or less driven?
No, I don't. I think there's people willing to put themselves on a line and create a product or service that'll fulfill a need and be profitable. I really do. It's just not for everybody, and sometimes you're in this environment in Sacramento, and it's a business, it's a government society, and it's very different. I observe people very differently. They're all wonderful people. I have wonderful conversations with them, but they're not built the way you and I are built. That's all I'm saying. And all the young people we deal with, they're just not built that way. But society has to have leaders, innovators, and then they have people that either buy the product or service or somehow help facilitate it in some way. And that's just part of the game,
Well, I think without question, the opportunity to build a significant business is as good as it's better than it's ever been. I mean, look at the amount of venture dollars out there chasing so few companies these days. If you have a good company that's got a little bit of traction, you're venture backable.
There's no doubt about it. I mean, you have to put your pitch together in a meaningful, honest way. You have to go out there and put yourself on the line and talk to people, listen to people. I think there's so much money out there.
Yeah.
There's so much money out there. I mean, there's no question about it. And you have to have access to it. Now, is that money coming to Sacramento? I don't know that. Mark, you have a better feel for that.
The statistics show that Sacramento, we actually had an okay year last year, but with some bigger dollars coming in, but up to this point, we're very underrepresented in terms of venture capital. Yeah. A town like Austin, which has a lot of similarities in terms of size, being a government town, but it gets like 5 times the amount of venture capital we do, right?
Yeah,
and it's because there aren't enough Sacramento Entrepreneurial Academies. They didn't build out in growth factories, and the other things that are beginning to take hold here in Sacramento. I think puts us in a place where we can change, and where it's beginning to change. So, but yeah, we aren't getting our fair share of the venture dollar. But that's what we're doing with the Growth Factory is we're actually rallying that seed capital dollar from inside Sacramento so that we can attract the outside dollar to here.
Yeah, you got to, maybe there's a critical mass needed. Yeah. Well, I just think about all the different outsource elements that we employed at Bay Equity as a company. People have created a company like in the compliance area where they take a niche of the compliance and they put together documents to help you get blessed by a given regulator. We couldn't do that with staff, but we can buy that service in a New York minute. And
that's an entrepreneur solving your problem.
Absolutely,
right?
it is.
Entrepreneurs solve the world's biggest problems, and sometimes they look like a compliance issue at Bay Equity. Other times it's Uber, I suppose. But yeah,
that's right.
It doesn't have to be Uber though. These little nuances. They seem like nuanced businesses, but they're meaningful problems in your company. But they're getting solved by these people that are coming out of UC Davis. They're coming out of Sac State a little bit. They're definitely coming out of the Bay Area. But with this migration of talent coming from the Bay Area here, the tech workers and so on, how much of an impact do you think that might have on our region over time?
It's hard. That's hard to say. I was in Mesa, Arizona not long ago. I sold some property here in California. I sold 54 lots to a national builder, and I 1031 it and bought some. My concept was to buy several new single-family dwellings for rent. So I went to Mesa and talked to a number of different sales agents. But I always ask, who's your customers? The first thing out of the sales agent's mouth was, remote workers are moving to Arizona. They can buy more house here, blah, blah, blah. So the remote game is real. I may be unstoppable. There may be a tipping point for big corporations to realize that their people want to work at home in many respects.
Well, it's interesting because Sacramento's been especially the suburbs of Sacramento have been the beneficiary of this move. Like we're here in Placer County. I know El Dorado Hills. I'm going to be there tonight. People are moving there for quality of life.
No question.
Yeah.
Well, I chatted with a woman the other day at the airport. And she just said, my mother and father just sold a house in downtown San Francisco, and they bought 2 houses up here, one bigger for themselves, and one was a rental. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And all of a sudden, they have their piece of the rock in a different manner. She said they're loving it. They're loving it.
Yeah. So you see, it's interesting because you see, I'm sure you hear about this as well as, hey, I'm going to go not just invest outside of California, but I'm going to move to avoid tax and regulation and so on. But with Sacramento, the greater Sacramento region, having this boom, this influx, it's. I think they're coming into Sacramento faster than what people are leaving.
It's interesting. I've read some anecdotal information that says there's people still coming to California, and they're actually at a little higher income level than you would surmise. A lot of it has to do with older retirees coming to be closer to their family who have established careers here. So it's an interesting thing. Our situation is, my wife and I have head faked towards a second home more times than I can count because it would always end the conversation say, we won't use it that much. It just doesn't make sense for us. Well, finally, we decided we're going to have a second home. So
where are you going to do the second home?
We bought a place in Scottsdale.
Oh, that's great.
But it's a nicer, different climate. It's turnkey.
You think you'd be like a snowbird type person, or will you?
We might be. That might be.
It's not really snowing here, but it gets cold.
We're going to start off just putting our toe in the water and see what it's like. I mean, we have both our children in the Sacramento area, and we're not leaving here. You know, but it's just it's fascinating because when you look at the freedom of America, you have options. Money buys time and space. You can do things differently and this and that. And, we spent our whole life working, On April 1st, I handed in my first and only resignation ever. Think about it.
So what now then? So you got the house in Scottsdale, or is it, do you mind if I ask you how old you are?
I'll be 76 in May.
76. Okay. So May what?
May 16th.
Okay, I'm May 17th. Okay, I'll be 59. So with that said, you could do whatever, you've been able to do whatever you want, whenever you want, with whoever you want, and so on. But, I mean, what do you think now that you've actually, you stopped the other, now restarting something, does it look a lot different? Would you restart a real effort, or is it going to be like semi-retirement, or is it?
It's a little too early. I don't feel that I'll be doing anything. I just don't feel like I'll be doing anything for a while, number one. And number two, I feel like maybe I'm done for that phase of my life. I don't know what the next phase is. I'd love to be able to visit with younger folks and instill confidence and maybe, I tell Mark, I tell everybody I talk to, I said, I'm just one person's opinion. I'm happy to answer any question you have, but just remember, I'm just one person's opinion. It's my spin, given my background and everything I've been through in my life. I'm almost always 99% positive, but I think I'm just going to take it easy for a while in that respect. I don't know. I have my health, and that's such a big deal.
Well, besides the people that you help, and obviously you like the game, so you like winning. I sort of wonder, this is for our audience, but I think maybe it's for me a little bit too. Were there things or books or tools that sort of reminded you of New Jersey or where you came from, so that it kept you, I guess, driven, for lack of a better term? That was there is that just innate, or are there things that I look at that and that reminds me? I look at my kids and it reminds me of why I'm doing it. Are there things like that have inspired you?
Yeah, I think. It started about a year ago. I really started doing some reflection, so I had to get to about 75 to start doing that. I just look back on a lot of things, and I was saying this to somebody the other day. I mean, through a real twist of fate, I was able to play varsity basketball in high school. By twist of fate, I mean that our high school enrollment expanded to such an extent that it was too big for the physical high school that we had, which was less than 7 or 8 years old at the time. So what the administration did is they split the high school into 2 schools. Our school was called Triton Regional High School, and they split it into Triton Red and Triton Blue. So all of a sudden, they had 2 varsity teams instead of 1. So I was probably going to be cut in my junior year, and I ended up getting a slot in my senior year because they split. And we went on to be champions, and we employed the 1-2-2 zone press that was popular by John Wooden in UCLA. And I was the one guy. My job was to drive the guy to the sideline so we could get a double team for the steal. And I don't think I've lost that.
Interesting.
Just that drive, and no matter what I do to win and achieve. And so to answer your question, I think it's pretty much innate.
Yeah, you got, okay.
I was a second of 6. I had a paper out at 8, the classic paper out story. And then I did all kinds of jobs. I paid for 3 degrees. I got good grades, decent grades. I got an internship with Hoffman LaRoche. I was a detail man for Librium and Valium. Hello? I didn't even know what mental illness was, but I'm out detailing those drugs, Went in the Army.
How did your military career affect your the rest of your life?
Oh boy, that's a big question, Mark.
Question, but
I grew up. I became a man. I became a leader. I had to. Just part of who I am. I get in the Army. I enlisted OCS. I was in, for a month or two, and I realized, maybe I don't want to be an officer. Maybe I don't want to give the Army 3, possibly 4 years. One of my biggest goals was to get an MBA. That meant everything to me. It would take me to another level in the business education wise. This is 1967, 68. So that was a driver. So I ended up dropping out. I didn't even go to OCS. In basic training, I dropped out. So I ended up going to advanced infantry training at Fort Leonard Wood in Missouri. And that was the home of the combat engineers, or one of the homes of the combat engineers. They were just starting a combat engineer NCO academy, and I got picked to go to that.
Oh, wow.
So we start with 120 guys in this, the second class of the NCO academy. 60 of them graduated after 23 weeks. 60 dropped out, got kicked out, dropped out. 10% of the class make a rank E6. So you're honor graduate. Mm-hmm. So there were 6 guys that got made E6. I was one of those guys. I get my orders for Vietnam. I get orders for the 101st Airborne. I report to my orderly room up in Phu Bai and I Corps up northern South Vietnam. I go in the orderly room. I report to a 6'6" African-American first sergeant. He stares me, looks me up and down. He says, Sergeant Corbett, meet me in my hooch in 15 minutes. That was where his barracks, his hooch was his barracks. He's laying on his rack, staring at the ceiling when I report, knock on his screen door. And I said, Sergeant Corbett reporting. And this first sergeant, he didn't look at me, kept his head staring at the ceiling of this kind of a canvas roof. He said, Corbett, somebody thought you were E6, and I'm going to find out why. And then he says, get out of here. The most fascinating thing is that all the non-commissioned officers in my company didn't cast me aside as somebody that made rank so fast. They took 10, sometimes 7, 8, 9, 10 years to make the rank that I made in 8 months. Mm-hmm. They could have treated me like crap. Yeah. They did the exact opposite to me. They taught me everything they knew. My men survived in Vietnam, and I survived in Vietnam because of them. I mean, it's a powerful story of an organization that reached out to help somebody because you can go to these academies and learn in stateside, but that's not the real world in the jungle. So, I feel like in a lot of respects, Mark, I've been blessed in so many different ways. I really mean that. I mean that wholeheartedly. So anyway,
you feel, I talked to my son about this, as our audience may know, my son was shot in the leg in Afghanistan. Mm-hmm. And so I've often wondered how that can change you. You're obviously in Vietnam at a time of, a horrible time to be there. But it didn't kill him, right? So sometimes they say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Well, I work with demolition directly and indirectly for my virtual hole tour. And I blew up a lot of stuff. My job was that we did a lot of rappelling, get on the ground and blow landing zones with demolition, and we cleaned them up with chainsaws and what have you. So we did that. I did that a lot. My other job when I was back in the rear was to sweep roads for mines. That was another interesting job.
Oh, gosh.
And, I was a college graduate at the time. And a lot of people said, "Oh, Jim, you'll have a rear job in no time. They want college guys to work in the back, blah blah." I kept waiting for that job to come, and I talked to the colonel one day. I said, Colonel, I thought sir, I said, sir, not colonel. I said, sir, I thought there might be a rear opportunity for you. He says, Corbett, your name has been discussed, but I'll tell you, you're too good at what you're doing. You're staying out of here.
Wow. Well.
But back to what the military did for me, I grew up fast. Mm-hmm. I grew up real fast. Even though I was a kid on my own in Jersey, could always make a buck, always turn a buck, did good in school, always doing things, always active. I mean, I played basketball year-round almost in different leagues. And, but the truth of the matter is, I took advantage of everything that came my way, I feel like in many respects, I've been blessed by so many different people and places and things. So my concept of giving back is right and just, mm-hmm. So that maybe there's some symmetry in life in that respect. People have been good to me. I can be good to others, That's my big picture comment, Mark,
All right, so I'll give you one last,
sure.
We'll do one mic, give me a mic drop moment here. So last closing thoughts. we're speaking to entrepreneurs. Maybe we're speaking to investors that might want to enter this world of venture capital or early stage investing. But any sort of closing thoughts, words of wisdom to that group?
I think the most important thing is to recognize that God gave you 2 ears and 1 mouth. And that ratio of listening to speaking is really important. In fact, it's just, instead of 2 to 1, it should be 6, 7, 8, 10 to 1. Ask a question and shut up. You learn so much by listening. You learn about people's needs, hopes, wants, desires. And from there, you can sometimes build a product or service around it. So, be prepared. Prior planning prevents poor performance. There's another word, but that's okay. And that's an Armyism. But if you believe in what you're doing and you've drilled down and tested it, and even if you're not getting traction at the time, don't give up. I've seen some of our young people, when faced with great hardships, great roadblocks, that they summon that inner thing, their belief, and they move forward. I can think of several of our Academy alums that have started businesses that had some really dark days. Let's face it, Mr. and Mrs. Murphy are running around out there screwing up the works, and they're out of your control. You've just got to have a firm and hard belief in yourself and keep moving forward. I mean, there'll come a time where you might have to zig and zag. That's cool. Pivot is a nice word, but believe in yourself. Keep going forward, one step at a time. It's not as bad as you think it is. And sometimes less is more. People have a tendency to over-talk, over-speculate, over-imagine. Less is more. And I don't know if that's a mic drop, Mark.
Well, if you don't love Jim Corbett, you don't love entrepreneurship, this is a great, for me, just very authentic moment for me to hear what somebody of your success level has feels, what you feel. And I think all of us want to kind of get inside the mind and the heart of somebody who's done what you've done. So thank you for sharing your story.
You're welcome, Mark. It was my pleasure. I really appreciate being with you.
You bet. Welcome back to the Mark Haney Show. Jim Corbett, obviously, excellent speaker, excellent entrepreneur, a guy that gives back to the community through entrepreneurship, which is kind of interesting. He's teaching entrepreneurship in the Sacramento Entrepreneurship Academy. But he said something on the show today that I took to heart. I kind of indicated that, my dad got sick when he was young, and I was a lot younger as well. I think I was in my late 20s. And I've always looked for that mentor, that person that might be just a bit older than me for a little bit of advice, worldly advice. And I haven't had that in my life, and I don't have that today. But then Jim on the show, I kind of got vulnerable and mentioned that to him, and he, I'm like, what's it like to be, 58 years old and, still feel like you got some gas in the tank. And he said my best years, I was approaching my best years, which I hope that I was, but to hear it, to reaffirm that sort of the best is yet to come, that meant a lot to me. It means a lot to me. I feel like year over year, I've become more happy, more committed to what I want to accomplish in my life, and to know that you don't all of a sudden run out of steam at age 59 or 60. That maybe these could be your peak years, and I'm going to take that as his wisdom and take it in, and I'm gonna turn it into a little bit more confidence for what I'm working on, which is the entrepreneurial revolution. It is the growth factory. It is helping entrepreneurs to be entrepreneurs, to unleash their potential, and in turn help the hometown that I love. So thank you, Jim. Thank you to all of you. Thank you to all of you who have really pitched in to help the entrepreneurial community, and to all you out there that are in the trenches, fighting the good fight for entrepreneurship. It is not easy. and to all of you like Jim, who is a veteran that have fought for our country and are fighting now to keep America safe, to keep our community safe. Here at the Growth Factory, we think of that as patriotism, and entrepreneurship is hometown patriotism, and we're never above you. We're never below you. We're always by your side. Thanks for watching today's show. My goal for every episode is that you find a takeaway, something tangible you can use in your business today. And if you have a comment about a favorite takeaway, feel free to put it in the box below. And if you have a topic that you'd like me to bring up on the show, don't forget to let me know. And also, don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel if you want to learn more about entrepreneurship. Because at Haney Biz, we are always by your side.